Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the 411 from 406. My name is Chewie, and I'm joined finally once again by my brother from another mother, Mr. Pip. How are you, sir?
I'm great, but dude, why do we suck? Like what?
I don't.
What happened to us? Well, okay, I know what happened. I know some things that led up to the fact that we haven't podcasted in a little bit. Since I don't even want to know. You're probably going to tell me, but I'm not even sure I want to know.
I
But
am going to tell you.
there have been really good things that have happened since then that I think we can talk about here, which
Yes.
may give us a little bit of leeway and excuse room for something like that.
Yeah, so the last time we recorded was episode number 92, where we talked about our top 5 video game franchises, which was an amazing episode. If you haven't listened to it, I would urge you to go do it. I had a blast recording it. I've listened to it back once, but that was on June 13th. So we are sitting here. So we're sitting here on September 5th. So we're almost 3 months.
That's 3 months.
This is terrible. Yeah.
That's pretty bad. We are never going to hit 100 if we don't get our shit together, man.
No, we're not.
That's not good.
We're not.
But hey, it's understandable. I mean, the good news is, we haven't broken up. We're not fighting. It's nothing like that. It's just more of all the things in life that are happening that are keeping that from happening. But I can say with much pleasure that we it's not like we haven't talked or even haven't seen each other since that last fateful podcast in June, because I actually made it up there. I guess it would have been the first weekend of August, your birthday. I came to the land of Cleve, and we, geez, I don't know, where do we even start? Like, what a weekend that was. Probably of all the trips, and this is no offense to your lovely wife or your children, who I barely got to see in any capacity because they were gone. But man, one of the funnest weekends that I've ever spent in Cleveland that weekend, because it was your birthday and it was fucking SummerSlam. And we finally got our shit together and said, let's go to another wrestling event, which is the first time that you and I have shared tickets to a wrestling event since 1995. Is that right? 29 years, almost 30 years, I think.
Something would that have been the In Your House, the inaugural Buried Alive? Was that when we went to see that show?
That is correct. Let me look that up real quick just so I can have In Your House, Indie, Buried Alive. That event took place on October 20th, 1996. So
wow.
That was I mean, I'm not good at math, but I think that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
That was the last time you and I were at a wrestling event together. And when we found out that SummerSlam was going to be in Cleveland, it was like game on. Like, let's fucking go. Like, let's make this happen. And so, I came up to Cleveland, regardless of whether or not we would end up at the show, because we didn't have tickets. I mean, we could go into this whole story, right? Like, we tried to get tickets, and of course they were way overpriced in the beginning, and then they started to come down a little bit, and there were a couple areas where they were certainly reasonable, and we ended up getting tickets. Was it the morning of? Is that when we ended up? It was
that Saturday. It was that morning. Yes, it was.
It was that morning. And to be fair, I don't know if it's sold out. I don't think it sold out per se, because they had a lot of seats blocked off, but I would say there were still close to 70,000 people there. So it wasn't like they were dropping prices because of attendance issues. Like, it was a huge fucking crowd, about the same size as the Rolling Stone show that I'd seen there about a month before. And so, we secured our tickets, and we made this weekend out of that, which was like the most fun ever. I mean, I don't remember all the details for certain reasons, but between Annex Burgers and live wrestling events and hanging out with you and hanging out with your brother, man, it was just like the greatest weekend ever.
I agree. It was amazing. So let's see. You came in on Friday, Friday afternoon. We went and we got a burger at the Annex. And then we were off to our first live wrestling event of the weekend, which was SmackDown, where my good friend Scott we had a suite to go watch SmackDown, which was awesome.
Right. Well, and I almost actually had a bit of a trial and tribulation trying to get to Cleveland. I almost didn't make it for half a second.
Right. That's right.
because on my way there, about 10 miles maybe west of Columbus, my tire started getting really, really low. And I had stopped and I filled it up a couple times and it was losing pressure very, very quickly. So I had to pull off at the next intersection, just happened to find a discount tire. And they got me in right away, which was a shock because I've had good service there, but I've never had quick service there. And I'm like, hey man, I'm in between. I'm from Indy. I'm going to Cleveland. I need some help. I need a new tire. And they looked at it and said, yeah, you certainly do. And I had to buy three other friends along with that. So I bought a whole new set of tires. I'm like, there's nothing that's stopping me from getting to Cleveland. But that delayed my trip about an hour, hour and a half, something like that. But finally did make it into town in enough time to pull off the whole SmackDown thing, which was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So we stopped by the annex quick, and we didn't eat. We just maybe had a drink real quick. And then we headed down to SmackDown. SmackDown, the go home show for SmackDown for SummerSlam. I don't think the show itself was awesome from a wrestling perspective. I think everything after the show went off the air was amazing. That's when,
Yeah,
that
super
that's
fun.
when that's when they came out. They're clearly playing to the crowd. They're having a good time. They're dancing. They're singing. But
And
that
they're off
entire
air at that point.
yes,
Worth noting to those who don't watch wrestling or follow it very closely that when SmackDown and Raw and these live shows go off the air and the broadcast switches to something else, typically the event isn't over yet. They usually have like maybe another match or the wrestlers that ended the show, they'll stay out in the ring and they'll vamp a little bit with the crowd or some kind of fun stuff will happen, which is a really neat uh, it's a neat sort of Easter egg to
yeah.
see at a event.
Yeah, so we got I think we got maybe at least two matches, and I couldn't even tell you what they were. I remember though Jey Uso was out there and they played his song, which is arguably one of the greatest entrances right now in professional wrestling with that song and the crowd that gets into it. And it's fun. And the Miz was out there. The Miz is a hometown guy from Cleveland, and it was a great event. It was an awesome way to send the crowd home happy and send us home into into SummerSlam, which to your point earlier, we still didn't have tickets at that point. When we walked out of that building, we did not know if we were going to SummerSlam. So then let's see, Saturday we got up, and I think when we left Friday night, I think we were I think we were probably like, okay, like if we go, we go. If we don't, we don't. On Saturday, I think that's kind of where we ended that night. And was it that night that we tried to get? No, it was Saturday night that we tried to get Taco Bell. We'll get
Oh
into that.
God.
That was the worst. That was the
Yeah.
worst.
Let's call out that Taco Bell and make
Yeah.
sure nobody
So
ever goes there.
so Saturday we get up and kind of doodle around the house, and then we went to lunch at the annex.
Mhm.
And I believe while we were at the annex is when we made the decision that we were going to get the tickets for that night. Is that correct?
I think it was actually before. I want to say we talked to
Was it
your
right before
brother
that? Okay.
right before we left, and we found those seats that seemed, that looked like they would be decent, and they were reasonably priced. I mean, you're always going to pay a little bit more for a premium event like that, but they were
Yep.
reasonably priced, I thought, for where they were. And I think we told your brother to pull the trigger, go ahead and get them, and we'll send you the money and all that stuff. So I think, if I recall correctly, which is a joke,
Yeah.
by the time we got to the annex, I think we had
Okay.
tickets secured at that
Okay.
point.
So we went to the annex, had a burger, had a couple drinks, and then we continued our tradition. We went to a brewery that we had not been to before. I can't for the life of me remember the name of it. Do you remember the name of that brewery?
Uh, the beaver one.
Was it?
Busy
Okay.
beaver, happy beaver, some kind of
Busy.
beaver, furry
Let me see if I
beaver. I don't
can.
know. It was the angry beaver. I don't remember what.
Bum and Beaver. Bum
Bum
and
and
Beaver
beaver.
Brewery.
Okay,
Yes.
I was close. I knew it was
Yes.
alliterative. I just couldn't figure out what it
Yes.
was.
Yeah, so we went to the Bum and Beaver and we had a flight of beers, and Mark joined us out there. And then we went and we figured out we wanted to go downtown early for the event. I think the opening doors were what, 6 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock. We didn't want to get there that early, but we didn't want to like try to walk in with the entire crowds and crowds of people getting
Mhm.
it. So we said, okay, well, let's figure out a way that we can do some kind of like tailgating, per se. So we went and we bought a styrofoam cooler and a case of Coors Light,
Yep.
and then we proceeded to march that styrofoam cooler through Tower City. My brother was carrying it, and then
Right.
we parked. Well, we didn't park. We parked ourselves underneath a bridge in Cleveland and proceeded
Yes.
to polish off a case of beer.
And Tower City, for those of you listening who are
Yes.
not from Cleveland, is a giant mall downtown in a
Yes.
huge building. So we took a case of beer through the mall in a styrofoam cooler, which the lid wasn't even, we weren't even trying to put it on at that point because it was a cheap cooler, so it wouldn't fit on there.
Right.
And so like Mark was just trying to make it look as discreet as possible, but doing a terrible job. But there happened to be like 2,000 people in that fucking mall. It was insane. It was so busy.
Yes.
The one of the they had an official WWE store set up there where they were selling all their merchandise, the shirts and title belts and SummerSlam swag and all of that stuff. And the line had to be an hour long just to get in the thing.
Oh,
So it was an
it was crazy. Yeah.
absolute madhouse there. So it's both hilarious but not totally surprising. We were able to walk through there with a case of beer and nobody said anything. And then yes, we made our way to this bridge that was sort of between Tower City and Cleveland Browns Stadium, which is where the event was being held. And we just sat under a bridge and we drank beer and you shotgunned beer with your brother, which was hilarious because weren't these tall boys or something?
They were the 16
They were
ounces.
the
Yeah.
16 ounces. And I
Yeah.
just remember hearing this gargling voice saying, "Oh my God, 16 ounces is so much harder than 12." It was it was pretty hilarious to see a bunch of guys, or at least one guy approaching his 50s, trying to shotgun a 16-ounce beer, who's well out of form for shotgunning at this point
Right.
in his life. But it was so much fun because somebody a couple cars down was blaring just this mix of WWE entrance music, and there were people walking around, and just I don't know, it was a really fun vibe. Like people were there to have a really good time.
Yes.
And it's a little bit like going to your county fair. I mean, it's the people watching element, or even your state fair, I suppose, but the people watching element of a wrestling show is always interesting. But when you scale it up to a pay-per-view level where you're going to a venue that seats 70,000 people, you're going to see some shit. Like it's going to be a really interesting experience. People decked out in, cosplay and their favorite wrestlers, just all kinds of walks of life at these shows.
Yeah. You know what is funny? There was, if you remember, there was a little boy, maybe 10. I don't even know if he was that old. And his dad, they were kind of parked underneath the bridge near us, and you could tell that that kid was just in awe of. If I remember correctly, they drove from Minnesota, and he was just so excited to be there. And I walked over and I said, "Hey, your dad is like super cool that he brought you to this event." And I'm sure he was looking at me like, "Why is this guy walking across the under the bridge with holding a beer, wanting to talk to this 10-year-old?" But anyways, but to your point, like everybody was there to have a good time. I mean, I didn't see any fights. It wasn't like, what I mean? Like it wasn't your typical, even when you go to a Browns game, right? There's always some asshole that gets like way too drunk. And I didn't see that. It was just like everybody was there to have a good time. And there was a boatload of people there. I think they announced that it was the largest SummerSlam crowd in history, or the largest
Yeah,
domestics. Like there was some caveat they announced it. I can't remember what it
right.
was exactly, but
It was just sort of 60,000, right? Something like that.
something, yeah, 15, yeah, 59 and change, yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. But the event itself, we don't need to go match by match, but damn, it was a great event. To be there in person was amazing.
Our seats were actually really good. I
They
mean,
were
they
outstanding.
they
Yeah.
weren't 10 rows away from the ring or anything like that, but for a stadium that size, I mean, you have to think about it, if it was a football game, they would have been amazing seats, right? Because the
Right on
field
the
is very
50. Yeah.
large, but the ring is very small and they have a lot of seating on the floor. And I firmly believe that our seats that we had were probably better than a lot of seats on the floor because that's all flat, that's all level seating. So if you've got somebody sitting in front of you who's 2 inches taller, you're not going to be able to see what's going on without standing up. And it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. So, we were, I don't even know how to describe where we were, but we were sort of in the main, I guess, level is what I would
The
call it.
lower bowl. Yeah.
The lower bowl. We were
Yeah.
in the kind of the maybe 75% up from the bottom of the lower bowl, like, so like 3/4 of the way towards the top or something like that, or maybe halfway. I don't know. But I thought they were perfect, and they were it. I took a lot of pictures of it, but the pictures don't do it justice because the ring seemed a lot closer, and the presentation of the video screens did a good enough job that if you couldn't see some of the details, you could look at that and you could watch what basically everybody was seeing on TV. And from that perspective, the only minor criticism that I had about the seats was just that we couldn't see the entrances. We weren't really positioned really well to see the entrances very well. But, they showed those on the big screen, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, we were opposite the hard cam, right? So so a lot of times, like towards the beginning of the match or the end of the match, the wrestlers would be looking away from us, which again was fine. And again,
Yeah.
to your point, the entrances you just kind of watched it on the big screen,
Yeah.
and really there was only one entrance the entire night that you really would have wanted to see, right? And it was the return of Roman Reigns, right? It
Oh,
was
yeah, for sure.
it was spectacular to see Roman come back after so many since first time since WrestleMania. So the first time since March, and to come back and effectively help Cody retain the title and or align himself against the bloodline was just, I mean, that I've been in that stadium when it was loud. I don't know that I've ever been in that stadium when it was that loud. It was amazing when he came out.
Yeah, when you go to a show like this, the people who are in attendance, the one thing that you really hope for is some kind of really crazy, amazing surprise that you weren't expecting. Like you hope and to some degree expect to see good wrestling, good matches, good storytelling, all of that stuff. But what you're really hoping for in the back of your mind is a big surprise, like something you weren't expecting. And usually that comes in the form of somebody who you weren't expecting to be there shows up and does something crazy, whether it's a legend or whether it's somebody who you thought was injured and wouldn't be back for a long time, or to your point, in this case, it was Roman Reigns, who up until WrestleMania was the biggest thing in wrestling for like the last 3 or 4 years. And we had a lot of discussions about what's going to happen tonight. Who are we going to see? What big things are going to happen? It's a big event, so they're going to have to pull out all the stops. And there were a lot of people saying, "Oh, Roman's going to come back," and I'm like, "No, that's not going to happen." I was definitely against that, and I still am kind of against it conceptually. I think they should have waited a little bit longer, especially because SummerSlam in itself is a pretty popular pay per view. I think Survivor Series is the one that needs a little help, so I think that one would have been a better one for him. But at any rate, there were a lot of rumors about who might come back or what might happen, and it was really cool to see him come back. So I feel like I got, as a fan who doesn't get to go to a lot of these events, I got to check off a handful of boxes. I got to see Rhea Ripley wrestle. I got to see Liv Morgan. I got to see Roman show up. I got to see Cody wrestle. I got to see Seth Rollins. He didn't wrestle, but he was there, and that was pretty cool. Got to see CM Punk wrestle, which is not something anybody thought they would see,
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
again for the last 10, 12 years. So, I mean, it was a fantastic show. It was so much fun. I don't know if the purists thought it was a good show, but as far as from my perspective, being in attendance and expecting to be entertained, but not to be wowed, I came out of there wowed. I came out of there with a really favorable impression and thinking, man, I want to do this again. And it just so happens we might have the opportunity to do this again next year.
Yeah. So the Royal Rumble is going to be held in your hometown of Indianapolis in February, which
Woo-hoo!
is amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think if we can make that happen, we should make that happen for sure.
We've been talking about it. I think we're gonna discuss it as it gets closer. There are, always obstacles and things we need to see if we can work
Yeah.
through to make that happen, but I don't see why we can't. And SummerSlam turned out to be not as difficult as we thought it would be. We just had to be patient with where we were
Yep.
going with it. So Lucas Oil Stadium, in downtown Indianapolis, I think is about equitable seating capacity wise to Cleveland. And but it's the Royal Rumble, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I think that Rumble might pull more seats than a SummerSlam, but I don't
It
know.
might, yeah, I
It's
don't
tough
know.
to say. It depends on what else they're lining up for the event, right? If there's outside of the Rumble matches themselves, of which they will take up the
That's
largest
2 hours.
portion of the
Yeah.
show, there will have to be a few other matches that will interest people along the way. And I'm sure maybe one of those will be John Cena because he has announced his retirement tour, or whatever that means, that he's going to be spending the next year saying goodbye to all the cities he's visited in the past. So yeah, so exciting stuff. Fantastic weekend, fantastic show. SummerSlam was amazing. I mean, I guess we could finish off with our Taco Bell story because that was the end of that night, which was fucking terrible, man. Oh my
So,
God.
so we parked my car at my brother's house, and then so we said, okay, well, we will order. We were very hungry. We didn't eat anything, right?
No
We
dinner.
lunch at the annex, had no dinner, and so we said, okay, well, we'll order on the app, and we'll have it ready for us in Twinsburg, in the Taco Bell in Twinsburg when we get there.
Yep.
And so we did that. It's about a 20-minute drive from my brother's house to that Taco Bell. We get there, and the lady at the drive-through says we're closed. And I'm like, well, how are you closed? Like, the app took the order. Well, we're closed. And she
And
was,
mind you, this is a Saturday night. And what
yes.
time was it? Like 11, 11:30? Like it
It
wasn't
was not
late.
super. Yeah, it wasn't. It's not like it was 3 a.m. Yeah, it was not. Yeah, it was maybe 11 o'clock. It was.
And
Yeah,
I'm
it was
like,
not super late.
what the fuck do you mean you're close? That is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So then we left there. We tried to place an order at another Taco Bell in Macedonia, which is one town over. They were closed. So then we placed an order for another Taco Bell in Streetsboro, which were open. We get to the Streetsboro Taco Bell and we proceeded to wait 1 hour in that line. And if you've ever been to a Taco Bell, the problem is once you get in line, you've got somebody in front of you and somebody behind you, and you can't move. It was, it was, and so we didn't get home until what? I mean, 1 o'clock. I mean, it was late by
Yeah,
the time we were eating our
it was
tacos.
really late.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
tacos were soggy, and it wasn't, for obvious reasons, it wasn't the best Taco Bell, but
Yes.
it was it was still good, and it was still, I mean, it was the only slight blemish on the whole day because, and
Yes.
I'll take it, right? That's to be expected.
Yeah.
But man,
Yeah.
what a fun weekend. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'm always I always love when you're coming into town, and the fact that we got to do that this year, I think, was awesome. So let's see, two other real quick wrestling things before we move on. I got a bunch of
Yeah,
topics that we want to cover here tonight.
absolutely.
One that I just saw today, I saw that Hulk Hogan signed a 5-year contract
Hmm.
with the WWE
Yep.
today, today
Yep.
or yesterday. Um, I don't know. I just wanted to get your thought. I don't really care about Hulk Hogan anymore. I'm kind of like, I appreciate what he did. He's an icon. He's the da da da. But like at this point, to me, he's nothing. Like, he's never going to get in the ring again. He's
Oh, of
never going to
course.
do anything. Right? I mean, he can barely walk. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Hulk Hogan in 2024? Is that a splash? Does it matter? Is what it
No,
is.
I don't think it
Yeah.
matters anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you can overstate how important he was to the business. And I think that that's probably why he's still signing
Yeah.
legend contracts with the WWE. And to be clear, that's all it is. It's just a legend contract, which basically means they've got him for appearances. They've got him in sort of a, I guess you could call it a bit of a non-compete, right? Like
Yeah.
if they sign him, he can't show up on any competing wrestling programming, AEW or whatever. Like they're going to pay him. He's going to maintain a salary for being like an ambassador. Like he'll travel and he'll speak, on behalf of the WWF or WWE. Which I don't know if that's if that's a great idea or not, but he's
Well,
put his
yeah.
foot in his mouth a couple times with some of the things he said for sure. But I mean, is it a splash? No, it's absolutely not news anymore. I wish it could. I wish he could get involved in some capacity. I just
Yeah.
don't. Obviously not in ring, but even if he was a manager, or he would do something. I don't think he will. I mean, he's old. He's in his, I think, early 70s at this point, so
Yeah.
he's probably not traveling as much. But yes, I saw some clips from his interview with Logan Paul, and some of that was interesting. But because Logan asked him directly, he's like, "Were you at WrestleMania 40?" He's like, "No, I wasn't there," but he didn't really go into any other details why. And I thought that was very curious because you and I both commented on that. Like WrestleMania 40 was, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
landmark anniversary for an event like that, and to not have the star that put WrestleMania on the
Yeah.
map at that venue to just like wave to the crowd. He wasn't even in the crowd, I don't think. And that, I think you and I both found that to be very curious, but
Yeah.
that's just sort of another tangent. But no, I mean, I don't think there's much news there with something like that. I
Yeah,
think,
I mean, I think the sad reality is, the those icons that we grew up watching, and there's really only a couple of them that I would put in that category that are still alive, quite frankly. They're just getting so old and so beaten down, right? You look at, you talk about Hogan, you talk about Ric Flair. I mean, Ric Flair
oh,
is
Jesus.
still, he's still out there trying to style and profile, but he's just not, he's almost 80 years old.
Yeah,
And and Hogan is quite a bit younger than Flair, but just I mean, is in so much pain. You can see it just the way he walks.
right.
It's just it's father time, right? I mean, it's just kind of the reality of the situation.
It is, but I also think that Hogan has a bit of a reputation of not being the best moral person in the world.
Well,
Like, I
that's
mean,
true.
I don't, that might not be the right way to say it, but Hogan has always been accused of being a politician behind the scenes,
Yeah,
and working all of the stories to his favor as much as possible. And it's hard to blame him because the wrestling business used to be about that. It used to be do what you can to survive or die kind of thing.
right.
But there are a lot of people who don't speak very favorably of Hogan and how he politicked behind the scenes. And it was really funny if if you watch any of that Logan Paul interview. And I only saw a couple parts, but I laughed out loud at one point because he's like, yeah, he was talking about the NWO and the whole, him being the third man, and that's the first time that he ever turned heel. When he was super popular, obviously in his early days, he wrestled his heel a little bit, but when he turned heel, he was talking about that story, and he's like, yeah, well, I had in my contract, brother, that I had creative control, but of course I never enforced that. Like, I would never do that. I'm like, fuck you. Like, that is the
Yeah,
biggest lie, the biggest bold-faced lie. Or maybe he just thinks that creative control means something different, but like, there are unlimited stories on the internet about people coming up to Hogan saying, hey, let's do this. He's like, that's not going to work for me, brother.
doesn't work for me, brother. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly what he says. So
Yeah,
like he either believes his own lies or he's just too old to remember what the truth was. But like, that's the kind of stuff that I feel like really compromises his integrity. And if everybody liked him more, if he was um and John Cena, like,
right.
as much as you might not like the good guy shtick, like, I don't think anybody really hates John Cena, right? I don't think you
I would
can,
agree with that. Yeah,
as a
yeah,
person. Like, he represents himself very well. He seems very mature and very well spoken, and he just doesn't seem like a fucking roided up jock. He just doesn't sound
yeah.
like that. He carries himself well, and I can't say that about some of the older legend contemporaries.
I agree. All right, and that's actually a pretty good segue into my last wrestling thing of the night. There's a Mr. McMahon documentary
Mm,
coming out on Netflix
mm,
that I saw a trailer for today.
yep.
I'm actually really excited about it because I don't know what is going to be in there. And what I mean by that, and I think we've talked about it on the pod before, but and we're not going to rehash it, but like Vince got into some really, really bad legal trouble, which effectively ended his association with the WWE, a company that he built on the back of guys like Hulk Hogan, right? Vince McMahon, I think for everything bad that you can say about him, he is the wrestling promoter of all wrestling. Like, you can't take that away from him. He is what Don King was to boxing. He was what Barnum and Bailey was to the circuit. Like, he is he is the guy that put professional wrestling on the map. And and it's unfortunate, I think, that this legal trouble, I'll call it that, and it's way bigger than that. It is unfortunate that took him down. I'm glad it took him down because of how heinous those things were. There's a part of me that's a little bit sad that his legacy is going to be that, right? Versus all the good that he did for the sport, quote unquote, that I love, that I've loved for 4 decades now. So I don't know what are you kind of where I am on this documentary? Are you excited to see this documentary? Do you not care? Like where are you on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I am, if there was ever a documentary on anything related to wrestling, this is the fucking cup of Christ. This is the lost ark of the covenant, right? Like there's nothing I feel like that could be more important than a documentary on Vince McMahon because of all the things that you just said, like how important he was to the world of wrestling. Like again, I echo your commentary, 100%, in that he, the things that he did in his later year, the transgressions, to put it lightly, were deplorable, and you can't forgive him for those. I mean, maybe you can forgive him, but like you can't put them aside and pretend like they didn't happen. But what he did for the wrestling business was nothing short of incredible. As far as being a promoter, being a businessman, he took this company that his father owned and he turned it into a multi-billion-dollar company. And you just don't hear about that stuff. He put it in the homes of everybody. He revolutionized what it meant to have a relationship with the cable companies and the pay-per-view and all of that stuff. Like none of that stuff had been done before. And so I, I guess to answer your question, I don't know what to expect from this documentary. I feel like it could go a handful of different ways. It could be a puff piece on how important he was to the business. But obviously, if you've seen the trailer, it's not that. Like it's going to talk about all the stuff that has happened in the last 2 or 3 years, or that has come out in the last 2 or 3 years. So wrestling fans like you and myself are familiar with this DVD that came out about 20 some odd years ago called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior, where it was a total slander piece. They put out this thing just to ruin the reputation of the Ultimate Warrior because of reasons we won't go in on this particular podcast, but basically he had fallen out of grace with the WWF at that
With
time,
Vince.
with
With
Vince
Vince.
specifically.
Yeah.
So Vince basically said, let's bury him. Let's do everything we can to do that. And so maybe that turns into this. I don't know. But I hope at the end of the day, what it is it's an honest documentary. And what I really hope is that a lot of the footage of guys like Hulk Hogan and Triple H and John Cena and all these people who are coming out and doing interviews for this documentary have done these interviews with all the information, because this documentary, if I'm correct, started filming well before all the allegations came out against Vince. And my guess is that Triple H wouldn't come out afterwards and have a lot to say about Vince. I mean, I don't think he's in a position to be publicly addressing that situation. I don't think he
Mhm.
has, or if he has, it's been so high level general that it can't possibly get him in hot water. And let's not forget, he's married to Vince's daughter.
Oh, by the way,
So
yeah.
yeah, who I'm sure is nowhere near that documentary, but in terms of like, newer interviews or anything like that. But I think it has the potential to be one of the most important wrestling documentaries that has ever been created. And Bill Simmons, who I like and respect very much,
I love Bill Simmons.
I
I love
think
Bill. Yeah.
I think he can make that happen. But I'm also wondering about the relationship between WWE and Netflix and how that influences everything, because they're in bed together now. And they weren't when this documentary started filming, but now that it's over, the WWE is moving a lot of their content to Netflix starting in 2025. So they're going to have, I think they're going to have the pay-per-views. I know they're going to have Raw. So it's things are changing and there's a lot of money exchanging hands. So I just really hope it's not one of those things where it's like, it was okay. I, I I'm concerned that it's just not going to enlighten anybody. It's not really going to try to dig very deep, that all this sensationalism around the things that he's been accused of are just kind of going to get blown over, because none of that stuff's been settled yet. That stuff is all still actively in
Yeah.
court, if I or not in court, but like, he hasn't. He, I think there are still things going on from a legal
Yeah.
perspective that they can't really come to any conclusions.
Yeah. I'm sort of hoping that because I think you're right. I think the majority of the documentary, I think, was done prior to all the bad shit about Vince coming out.
Yeah.
And so, let's just say for argument's sake, it's a 2 hour documentary or a 3 hour documentary.
I
You
heard
know,
them say series, so I'm thinking maybe
oh,
it's multiple episodes. So it could be 3 or 4
okay.
parts. I don't
Okay,
know.
maybe on the far upside, it might be 6 1 hour episodes, right? Just I'm making that up. I don't know that at all, but I, I would guess that probably 80 or 90% of that was done ba- prior
Yeah,
to these allegations and this, that, and the other thing. Here's what I don't want to see. I don't want to see them ignore it, which they're not going to.
correct.
I don't want to see them treat it as a footnote or an afterthought, which I don't think they're going to do. I also don't want to see them frame the entire story through that lens. You know what I mean? Like I don't want them I almost don't want them to start with it, right? I would rather them tell it in chronological type order.
Yeah, I
So
don't
I
want
don't
it to
I don't
be a
know.
TMZ episode. Like I don't want it to
No.
to feel like that. But here's what I think I'm struggling with getting over, which is keeping me from being excited about this documentary, which is, as well as I know, as well as any wrestling fan knows, that the people who have worked and grown up in the wrestling business are very, very traditional, faithful people. Faithful's not the word, loyal people,
Well,
right?
yeah.
And I would be shocked if anybody of any significance, like a John Cena or Triple H, was on that documentary and said, Vince fucked up and I don't want anything to do with him anymore. Like that was bad. Like John Cena has come out and he's talked about some of that stuff. And John Cena is very good about being careful with his words. But
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see any wrestlers come out and say, I had no idea he was such a piece of shit and this is ridiculous. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And I feel like
I don't
there's going
know.
to be a lack of honesty with some of that stuff because nobody wants to come out and speak bad against Vince. They can speak bad against what he did, but
Right.
nobody is going to throw him under the bus as a person. That's my suspicion. And I'm willing to bet he's kind of a shitty human being too. And nobody's going to say that because there's a certain level
Yeah.
of loyalty because, hey, if he didn't do all those things that he did, the argument could be made that there wouldn't be a WWE like there is today. Now, that's not to justify anything, to be
Right.
very clear, but that level of loyalty is kind of what the wrestling business has operated off of, especially going back to the days when Vince took over from his dad.
I guess in my mind, I see a very clean break. And first of all, I agree with everything you just said about the loyalty to Vince, right? And the loyalty to the wrestling business, right? And I immediately go to guys like Bruce Pritchard and like those kind of guys that have been with Pat Patterson that were with Vince through most of that, right?
Right. Super
Um,
close.
super close, like Vince's inner circle, and I would put Triple H in that category now as well.
Yeah.
He's his son-in-law, so you're right. Triple H is not going to come out for he's in the C-suite of the current organization.
Right. It would
He's
look
his
bad.
son-in-law. Yeah, he's just not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I think there's a delineation that can be drawn between all of the I'll call it dastardly, just and as I twirl my mustache, the dastardly things that Vince did from a wrestling perspective, right? Taking over the territories, some of the underhanded, backhanded things that he did in terms of the business, in terms of the wrestling business, right? There's those things, and then this kind of line in the sand into the personal things
Yeah.
that Vince did in these latest allegations. I wouldn't be surprised to see even the Bruce Pritchards of the world speak very candidly and openly and honestly about what Vince did in terms of the wrestling business. I don't think they'll touch the stuff the lawsuit stuff. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
they can't. They
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 can't.
they
No,
absolutely
but
can't
yeah,
because you
it's
have to
ongoing.
consider, well, not
Yeah.
only is it ongoing, but the if you how do I say this? To your point, Bruce Pritchard, Triple H, and Nick Khan, and a lot of these people, Pat Patterson, were in his inner circle. You're going to tell me that they had no idea that any of this stuff
Right.
was happening? The minute they start addressing that stuff and condemning him for it is the minute people are going to start asking questions. Well, you were really fucking close to him.
Yeah.
You guys spent 23 hours a day around each other. You're
Right.
telling me you didn't know any of this stuff, that you didn't have any information? Those guys are not going to open themselves up to that because guys like Bruce Pritchard, Nick Khan, they're still working for the WWE. They're still a very big part of what's going on
Nick
there from a
Khan's the
business.
CEO, right?
Right. And
Nick.
Bruce
Yeah.
Pritchard's well, I don't remember what his title is, but
Yeah.
obviously Triple H is head of creative and all that stuff. So like they have to be very careful about what they
Yeah.
say. I think they will applaud him for his
Business
business,
acumen.
exactly,
Yeah.
business acumen, and they will comment on the allegations. Maybe they'll say, "Gosh, I hope this stuff isn't true, but if it is, then we'll see what happens," that kind of thing. But
Right.
nobody's going to come out and say Vince McMahon's a piece of shit, because otherwise you'd be like, "Well, then why the fuck did you work for him for 3 decades? Like
Right.
that doesn't make any sense."
Yeah, I think it's
So,
probably fair to say that anybody in that documentary, and obviously we haven't seen it, anybody in that documentary that is coming out guns blazing against Vince,
right,
right? Either no longer works for or never will work for again the WWE,
sure,
right? Or they're to the point in their life and or career where they don't care what happened. You know what I mean? Like what happens to their career or their like
yeah,
by going after Vin. You know what I mean? Like, which again, to your point, Bruce Pritchard, Triple H, Stephanie, those people are not in that position
no.
for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
So I feel like there are going to be a lot of punches that are pulled, and that's going to frustrate me. But at the same
Yeah.
time, I almost don't really care about that stuff.
Right.
In terms of the content of the documentary, obviously I care about that stuff, and Vince needs to atone for his sins and all that stuff. But what I'm more interested in is all the stories about how the territories got
Yeah.
consolidated and how Vince went in and gobbled all those up. Because if I remember correctly, Vince's father told him specifically the one thing he didn't want to
Don't do
do
it.
is have
Yeah.
him take over those territories. And Vince basically did it
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah.
and then turned it into this empire that
Yep.
is huge. And that's the story that I want to hear. I want to know more about how he did that. I want to see interviews with him, which I think we're going to see, and hear about how fucking ruthless he was and how he
Yeah.
came to do that. Like that's the more interesting content for my money.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And in fact, I'll even take it one step further. I actually don't want. I'm not really interested in the legal troubles at the end, right? Like like I'm not condoning it. I'm not agreeing with anything. I'm not dismissing it, but I don't want to. I don't want to say I don't care, but I don't. I don't. That's not what I want to see in this documentary.
Well,
To your
let the courts
point,
handle that.
absolutely, absolutely. And then, yeah. And even then, I'm not really all that interested. Like I'm interested in what happens, but but from the wrestling fans perspective, I don't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? Like to your point, I want to see the 50 years that led up to that. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
And I
That
want to hear the
everything that
stories about
right,
some crazy
exactly.
decisions that were made at WrestleMania 5 or whatever, like some of the things that he has to say. Now, I don't know how much of that they're going to get into. I
Yeah,
don't
I don't
know.
know.
I mean, in the last couple of years that I've seen him in front of a camera,
He's not looking good.
he doesn't look good.
Yeah.
He doesn't look as aware as I've seen him in the past. So it's unfortunate that we're doing this documentary at this point in his life. So I'm not sure what he's really going to be able to add to that, but I'm hoping it's going to be something. I hope they talk to guys like Dick Ebersol from NBC and other people that he has done stuff with. But I think it has the potential to be the greatest. But I'm also, to answer your question that you asked about an hour and a half ago, I don't know if I'm excited. I will watch it, but I'm concerned that it's not going to live up to my expectations because this is the most important wrestling documentary
Yep.
I think that could ever exist. Period. more so than anything with Hulk Hogan, with any talent. Like there's nothing more interesting than the rise and fall of Vince McMahon.
That's perfect. All right, I got two other topic areas.
Yes,
I'll
yes.
let okay, you and
Let's
I'll let
move
you
on for
choose.
all those people who roll
Right,
their eyes because, like, God, these guys are fucking droning on
right.
about wrestling again.
So I got two topic areas, and I'll let you choose which one first. You want to talk about music first, or you want to talk movies first?
I think I want to talk movies, and I want to end with music. Because
Okay,
I feel stronger about the music stuff.
okay, fair enough.
Um,
Okay, so movies. I got three or four things I want to talk to you about.
nice.
Did you see Wolverine and Deadpool?
I did see Wolverine and
Okay,
Deadpool.
because when you were here for SummerSlam, you had not seen it yet, and I had seen it, and so we couldn't talk about it yet, and which was fine. Or
Hmm.
or
Yeah, I
maybe
think you're
after I
right.
saw
Yeah,
it, yeah.
yeah.
So we have not talked about, I don't think, this movie at all. So give me. We don't have to do a plot summary or anything like that. What'd you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Where do you
I
stand?
enjoyed it and I laughed a lot. I don't think it
Okay.
was a good movie. I don't know that
Okay.
any of them are good movies. I think that I'm happy to say, and I think it's probably archived somewhere in this podcast, that I was correct in predicting that it would be the most successful R-rated movie of all time, which it is. It beat out I think it was the Joker, and it has made about $1.2 billion as of right now. So it is very successful worldwide. Those are worldwide numbers. Um, I, I it I think if you set your expectations correctly, it's a great movie. It's a great time. It's a ride. It's fun. Turn off your brain. Enjoy the humor. They do that part really well. If you go into that movie thinking it's going to reboot or restart what has sort of uh, fallen behind in terms of the Marvel universe, that's not going to happen. Like it does nothing to push Marvel forward. If anything, maybe it just reignites people to be excited about comic book movies again, but it doesn't do anything with the overarching story of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, whatever that even is anymore. I'm not sure anybody knows, but it was fun. It was great, fucking great to see Hugh Jackman on screen as Wolverine again. Like it made me realize no matter how old that guy is, I don't
He
think
is Wolverine.
I'm not ready to
Yeah.
let that go. I'm just not. And I rewatched Logan before I watched this movie because I felt like that would be the only one that might be good to rewatch. And that movie was really good. I mean, I don't know if it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It
Yeah.
was very emotional. It was very heavy. It was one of Hugh Jackman's best performances as Wolverine. And I thought it was fantastic. So there were so many callbacks in this new movie for that, and some characters that even came back from it. And overall, I did like it, but it's gonna be one of those movies where it's like, yeah, I don't know how many times I'm gonna revisit it. I will definitely watch it again when it comes to Disney Plus, but as a movie, it's not something like Infinity War for me. It's not like Endgame for me, where I just think they're epic and they're important and all of that stuff. But I was glad it came out. I was glad I saw it. And I was glad I managed to make it to the movie without any significant spoilers, of which there are many. If you've been reading
Yes.
the news, but if you haven't seen it by now, then you kind of deserve it because it's
Yeah.
it's been out forever at this point. But what about you? I
Yeah.
droned on about it.
No. Yeah. I think I was, when I first saw it, I think I was probably a little bit higher on it than you were. Um, the word that I would describe that was a fun movie.
Yes,
I smiled the entire way through that movie, from the cameos to the callbacks to the breaking the fourth wall. I mean, I love the Deadpool character. I love the Wolverine character, and to see them together in a kind of a buddy cop type movie was outstanding. I will say that I after some reflection, I agree with you. It's from a plot perspective, it's kind of a mess. Like it is.
it's kind of
There's
terrible, actually.
it is. There's a MacGuffin after a MacGuffin after a MacGuffin, and it's really nothing but kind of fan service. But they recognize that even within the movie, they recognize kind of what it is.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Sometimes to its detriment. That's one of the
yes,
problems I had. I think
yeah,
the fourth wall breaking is fun, but it was a little bit overkill in this movie,
yeah.
or maybe a lot overkill in this movie. There was a lot of fourth wall
It,
stuff in
it,
there.
it was, and I think the only thing that I will, not the only thing, I agree with it. I love the fact that they point out some really bad things about kind of this version of the MCU. I like that they point that out. I like that they point out that a lot of what they did in Phase 3 didn't work. And that's not that those movies were bad necessarily. I really think it's just that they pale in comparison to the first phase and the second phase of the MCU. I think that's
Yeah.
really the biggest thing that you can say against a lot of those movies. Um, this version of Wolverine for me, the foul mouthed, no fucks to give version of Wolverine, like that's the one that I really love. And I mean, if you've seen a Deadpool movie, you know what you're getting here, right? It's like there's not a surprise here. This is Ryan Reynolds. This is Deadpool. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have a whole lot of range. He kind of is what he is. But I enjoyed it. Um, I saw it. I actually saw it twice.
Oh, really?
Um, I
When was
did.
the
I
last
enjoyed.
time you saw a movie twice in the
Oh
theaters?
Christ! It was probably It was probably The Force Awakens, if I had to guess.
Holy shit.
And again, yeah. And the second time I saw it, like, is where I started to really, because I knew what the story was going to be or lack thereof, and I was able to kind of really kind of start to pick it apart and really understand just how loose and bad the story really is.
You know,
So
and
yeah,
that's fine. And you can forgive it for that to some
yeah,
degree. I think the part that I had the biggest problem with was that the first two movies focused so heavily on his relationship with her, whatever her
yeah,
name, I forget her
or
name in the
yeah,
movie, but um like the love angle with him and his girlfriend, and they really threw that to the side in this third movie, and it
yeah,
became sort of this really ancillary, like, yeah, we'll get to that, but like that's kind of what created, especially in the second movie. If you I don't know if you rewatched that. I did rewatch that before this one too. Like there's a lot of heart to that story, and
yeah.
it's
It's a
really
love
good.
story. It really is. Yeah,
And it's it's a I don't know if it's a good love story, but it's an endearing one. Like you just kind of grab onto it because there's this guy and his face is all mangled and she loves him anyways, and they have this really great back and forth, all this commentary in it. They've got this really crude sense of humor with each other, and it's so much fun. But like this movie starts and they just like mysteriously have broken up, and he's trying to kind of win her back, but that's not really his focus. And then they kind of sort of mend fences at the end of the movie, and it's just like it was put together very sloppy, and I feel like they lost the heart of what made those characters. Vanessa, that's her name, right? Is that
yes,
right?
yeah,
Okay, so Vanessa, she's barely in this movie, and that's okay, but like you know it just didn't come together. That story, that part of the story made no sense to me
yeah.
whatsoever, and they
Well,
rushed through it too quickly.
they did. Well, and it's funny. She really wasn't in the second movie all that much either. But I think the difference is like the love and the heart that he had for her in that second movie, he has for Hugh Jackman in the third movie, right? The third movie it's very clearly a bromance movie. Like Hugh Jackman and
Yes,
Ryan Reynolds like legitimately love one another.
yes,
And that to be fair, that comes through on the screen. Like every scene they're in, whether they're trying to kill each other or trying to save one another, it comes through that those two actors
yes,
genuinely like each other,
yes.
and which is cool,
And
which is just
it's
yeah,
super fun, but it
yeah,
takes any of the gravitas.
yeah,
It takes the real stakes out of it because
yes,
they focus too much on the fun. And again, I do think that's to the movie's detriment, but I don't necessarily think it makes it a bad movie. And obviously, it's not a
okay.
bad movie. It's
No,
hugely
it's made
successful,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
want to see it again. I think it was fun. They did some great stuff with Chris Evans. They did some great stuff with some other surprise cameos. So I liked it. I thought the ending was kind of terrible in terms of how they did the
Yeah,
finale and all
I
that
agree.
stuff. But I really love
J-
Nice Pool. I thought that was really
Yeah,
funny. That was with Ryan Reynolds and his long hair and his overly Canadian accent and
yes,
all that stuff. There
nice.
was some
Yeah,
really
nice.
brilliant comedy in it for sure. But
Yes.
overall, it was just like, it was fine. It was what it was. But
Okay. So I got two more movies to talk about. One,
okay.
and I sent you a text the other day. I finally watched Dial of Destiny, or
Mm.
I tried to watch Dial of Destiny. Dude, I couldn't even get through it. I stopped. I watched maybe an hour, and we had rented it from the library, and we returned it. Like
How
it was
much does that
bad.
break your heart?
It I, it's terrible. Here's the thing. So Crystal Skull was not a good Indiana Jones movie by any stretch, right? But it was a fun, like, swashbuckling
But
adventure
it
movie.
felt like an Indiana Jones
It
movie.
felt like an
It
Indiana Jones.
had that vibe, right?
Yeah.
Like it
D-
wasn't good and they got lazy with a lot of that stuff,
yeah.
but it felt like an adventure movie.
This one, and again, I didn't finish it, so maybe they tie it up in a bow and blah blah blah. But like, I was just like, well, first of all, I mean, and we've talked about it on the podcast. Once you go after the cup of Christ, it's like, what else is there, right?
Yeah.
And so at least in the fourth movie, there was this supernatural thing, and this is a math thing. It's a
Oh,
compass,
you
right?
didn't. I like, how far did you get? Because did you get to the point where they were in the plane and then they time traveled back to the past?
No, no, I never even got there. No, I never.
Like it's like
Did they
there's some
really?
that's like, yeah, oh God, yes. And
No, I didn't
Indiana
even get there.
Jones wanted to stay back in the past and they wouldn't let it. I mean, it was
No, I
it
see.
was
Yeah.
befuddling. Like I didn't think it was bad, but I did think that it didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie.
Where
Like
did they go?
James
Where did they?
Mangold, oh
Where
God,
did they
I
go in
don't
the
even.
past?
It's like back in whatever they were talking about the whole time. I hardly remember because I've only seen it once
Okay.
and I have not
All
gone
right.
back to revisit it. But it whatever period of time they were obsessed with, they ended up finding a way to time travel back there through a portal in the sky in an airplane, and the whole thing was just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Okay.
And like I said to you, I think in a text, I'm like, I'm never going to forgive this movie for not bringing back Short Round. Like
And they could have.
they
They
could have,
could.
because they
Yeah.
filmed this movie before he won his Oscar. So
Yeah.
it would have been a fucking layup to get him back with Indy. And I mean, I don't Ki Hui Kwan is like, he just seems like the most uplifting. He would have been a really great what do you call it? Like not a foil, but like he would have played opposite Indiana Jones really great,
Yeah.
because Indiana Jones is this old man, get off my lawn kind of guy, and Ki
Yeah.
Hui Kwan is this he's not a kid anymore, but he acts like a
He's like
kid.
an
He's just
upbeat.
like this
Yeah. Yeah.
super
Yeah.
bright, super positive individual that, like, they could have really done something fun with that. And instead, they did this Dial of Destiny, which apparently is a time travel mechanism that just, like, I don't know, man. It just, the whole thing was very drab. It was very depressing. It was very
Yeah.
Indiana Jones and the lawn that these kids must get off of. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
it's again, I mean, it's like I watched. I don't know. There was two or three chase scenes, and there was a train scene, and there was a go kart scene, and a golf cart scene. I mean, it was just like, and it was me and Amanda and Link, and we're just like, what, like what? And I couldn't even. I don't know. It was sad. I mean, it was sad because I love that franchise and I love that character so much,
they killed it.
and I just I I didn't even feel bad about not watching it. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I was so bummed. I was just
That
so bummed. Yeah.
that is a huge shame because it deserves better than that. It was so important to our childhood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, they brought Marion back at the end, and it was
Okay. I
good
didn't
to
even see
see
her.
her.
Yeah.
It was good to see her, but it was just like, it just didn't, I don't know.
Did they address Mutt at all?
Yes, they did.
They
They
did.
did address that. I think his character died in the war or something.
Oh,
He
really?
went off to
Okay.
war, and I think he
That's
died.
sad.
They
their son.
addressed it in a
That's
way that
sad.
I felt like was appropriate. Like they handled it okay, but it was
Would it
just
have been better to Would it have been better to bring Shia LaBeouf back?
no, no,
No.
no,
Okay.
I don't. Well, no, not with this movie. I mean, if they were going to make it more of a fun adventure movie, then maybe. But there was nothing about this movie that was fun, and
Yeah.
I don't know. Like James Mangold is a great director. I think he's a great director as much as I can comment on directing. I mean, he did Logan. We just talked about that. He
Yeah.
did The Wolverine. He did Walk the Line. I mean, he's had some really, really good movies, but like this movie is an Indiana Jones movie. It just didn't feel like it
Yeah.
didn't have the levity and the enjoyment. Like we weren't interested in it in the same way. And it just didn't, I agree. It
Yeah.
didn't work and it
Okay.
was very disappointing. I don't know if it may be a better movie than Crystal Skull because Crystal Skull was terrible. It was a fucking terrible movie, but at least it felt more like an Indiana Jones movie.
See, it's fun. And again, I didn't finish Dial of Destiny, but like I can sit down and rewatch Crystal Skull just as a like standalone swashbuckling adventure movie. Not a good, but just like one of those like Sunday afternoon, like, you know what I mean? Again, not a good Indiana Jones movie, but I don't know. I
Yeah,
mean, neither of them are good. And again, I think really what that franchise suffers from is the fact that they went after the greatest thing in the world
yeah,
in the
and
third movie,
you can't
and
top
then
that.
you can't top it. So speaking of that, minor segue, we have never done a podcast episode of favorite sequels. We need to do that. I,
Okay,
I thought we did. I thought we had done it. We've never done
we
it.
did best movies without a sequel, which
We
is kind
did,
of the opposite.
yes, but we
But
never did best sequels.
well, let's
And
do that. Yeah.
the reason it came to my mind the other day was I rewatched Terminator 2.
No.
And
Shit,
you know,
that
like,
spoiler alert, that might be my number one.
well,
It is the
it's
greatest
funny.
fucking sequel next
It's
to Empire
funny
Strikes Back.
because it's funny because when you start talking about sequels, immediately everybody always talks about Empire Strikes Back. I don't know that Empire is my favorite sequel of all. It's great, don't get me wrong, but I
Really?
think I think T2 would be a better, like,
It
I
would
don't
be a
know.
slug. It would be a
I think we
slugfest.
have, yeah,
We'd have to, that would be a good debate on that. It's
yeah,
almost like we'd have to eliminate those because those are too obvious that they would be in our respective top twos,
yeah. So anyways,
in varying orders. Yeah.
so we'll add that to the list along with favorite wrestler entrances here. So okay.
Yes. Okay.
I got one more movie, and then we can
Okay. I hope it's what
move
I
on to.
think it's going to be because I have one I want to talk about too, but I'll
Okay,
let you go with this.
I finally watched Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire.
Oh, that's right. You did tell me that.
Okay, so it
But we
wasn't what
didn't
you were
talk
thinking of. Yeah.
it wasn't what I was thinking of, but
Okay,
we didn't actually talk about this. So tell me, what did you think of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
I thought it was great. I had so much fun.
It was
I
fun.
had I
It
had
was
so much
much
fun with that
more
movie.
fun than the last movie.
Yes,
Yeah.
they
There were a lot
they.
of problems.
Oh
It
yeah, yeah,
wasn't a
yeah.
perfect movie, but
No,
it was more fun for sure.
it was. I sat there. So I rewatched Afterlife prior to watching Frozen Empire. And I think I told you, and we might have even talked about it on the podcast. I enjoyed Afterlife more the second time. I can't forgive them the way they treated the OG Ghostbusters in that flick. That's the biggest thing knock against it.
Yeah.
So Frozen Empire did that way better, right?
Yeah.
It included the OG Ghostbusters way better than that one. Um, I I had a really good time. The villain was a little bit different. It was outside of the Gozer space.
Yes. I like that.
It was still in New York. It was still familiar. I actually like it in New York versus wherever the last movie was in Idaho or Iowa or wherever it was.
Yeah.
I prefer it in New York City. I like some of the callbacks, the lion in front of the library, the Ecto and the fire station, those kind of things. I don't know. I had a really good time with it. I thought it was a good entry into the Ghostbusters saga. I really thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's cool. I have not revisited it yet. I I thought that overall the humor hit better in this movie because I mean there really wasn't hardly any humor or not very much. I felt like in Afterlife. I mean they kind of tried to shoehorn it in at the very end when they put the original Ghostbusters back in their outfits and had them come back,
Yep.
but it just didn't. It didn't. It felt really plastic to me. I don't know. But this movie felt more organic. Like they took their time with it a little bit more, and I think they did a better job with it. I do kind of wish they would have done better with the whole Walter Peck versus Peter Venkman kind of thing
Yeah. Yeah.
because they had that shot at the very end where they could have really gone toe to toe and they didn't. They really took their foot off the gas with that one. But, you know, for what they had and what they did, I thought that what's his name? Kumail, is that his name?
Yes.
I thought
Yeah.
he was actually really funny. Him and Patton Oswalt,
Yeah.
I thought they did great jobs. The newer characters,
Yes.
they had too much going on in the movie. Like from a story perspective, way too many characters, way too much going on. They could have consolidated a lot of that stuff and made it a little bit more simple. But at the same time, the stuff that I got, I felt like was just lighter. It was good to be back in New York. It was good to be back in the New York Public Library to
Yep.
see, the lions and the ghost downstairs and all that. And Dan Aykroyd had a big part. Ernie Hudson had a big part. Venkman didn't have a big part, or Bill Murray didn't, but
Yeah.
that's fine. I don't know that I need that. Like, I just need a little bit of acknowledgement of the older characters,
Yeah.
and that's what I was looking for in the first movie. I don't think the first movie was bad. It was disappointing. That was the
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
But this movie
Yeah. The
was this movie wasn't disappointing because my bar was already set pretty low,
yeah.
but it was fun. It was cool. If we never see another Ghostbusters movie again, I'm probably okay with that.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
But
I
this
I
was
was
cool.
I was yeah, I was a little bit, I won't say disappointed, surprised. I was a little bit surprised that we didn't get at least a 30-second cameo of Egon's ghost. I thought we would see that.
Hmm.
The same way they did in the last one. But I enjoyed it. I agree. I think I'm probably done with the Ghostbusters for the time being. I don't think
No.
we need to say anything else. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that. What there was something else you want to talk about with movies. What
I
was it?
did, and I'll make it quick because I don't want to run too long. But I went to the theater. I went to the IMAX in Indianapolis, which is one of the last remaining 70 millimeter IMAX theaters in the country. And I watched Alien Romulus.
Oh,
And
Alien. Yes.
I thought it fucking rocked. It was
Did you?
really, really
Okay.
good. I was very excited about this movie. It goes back to sort of, I mean, is it perfect? No, there's a lot of really goofy story elements that you could pick apart all day long if you want to. But I will say that this movie went back to its horror roots of the original Alien, the original Ridley Scott directed movie, and it felt more like a horror movie than a sci-fi action movie. And because of that, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend anybody go see it, especially in the theater, because it's a really good theater going experience. But if you can't, then just make it a point to check it out when it comes out on digital because it was good. There were some really creative things that happened in that, you know, uh, when you consider the aliens and all the different ways you have to kill them and get around them and all that stuff. There was some really fun stuff going on. It's not Sigourney Weaver. It's not the same movie. It doesn't have the standout actors like that one did. But I was impressed, very impressed by how much I liked that. And I'm really hopeful that they take a couple years off and they make another Alien movie,
That's
I don't
all.
know if it'll be
So
all the same cast, but whatever.
yeah, so first of all, I'm thrilled that you loved it. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that it has returned to its horror roots. I would love to see if you got it in. I would love to see a review for Scare Tissue if you've got
Ooh.
it in you.
I'd have to go see it again just to
Okay.
refresh it, but I would do that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's like it's directed by Fede Alvarez, directed Evil Dead, Don't Breathe
Mhm.
2, Texas Chainsaw, and
Yeah.
then this one. So that makes a lot of sense. Is it in the and I think the answer is yes. Is it in the same universe? Like it's not a reboot like it's part of the Alien It's in Ellen Ripley's universe.
Yes, absolutely it is. And
It
it
is.
takes
Okay.
place chronologically about 18 or 20 years after the original Alien movie. So just to sort
Okay.
of so chronologically, we've got Prometheus comes first,
Yep.
Alien Covenant comes second, then you have Alien, then you have Alien Romulus, and then you have Aliens, the James
Oh,
Cameron
so this is
movie.
in between Alien and Aliens. So this is like okay. I
Yes,
didn't realize
yes, it
that. Okay.
is. So, and there is a bit of a tie-in. I won't spoil anything, but there is something that they do to sort of tie those together a little bit.
Okay.
But it's it's pretty basic and it's very graphic. It's very gruesome. Like it is a horror movie. There are some scenes in that which made me kind of wince a little bit, which I like. That's what I wanted. I wanted
Yeah.
to go to a movie and be impacted by what I was seeing. And so I loved it. I can't recommend it enough. It might be my second or third favorite Aliens movie. I mean, of the
Wow.
franchise. I mean,
Okay.
I liked it. I mean, there may be a lot of people who disagree with that, but I think that I liked Prometheus a lot. I should say that. I thought that was a really good movie that a lot of people shit on for reasons I don't really quite understand. Its sequel, Alien Covenant, not as great. Just wasn't very creative. Wasn't very inventive. And they kind of trapped themselves in terms of telling a story. This one is kind of like a reboot. It's like a reboot in the sense that almost all the characters are brand new. You don't know them. They're in a different
Yeah.
place situation. It does tie together a little bit to the original Alien movie, but not enough that it relies on that. So yeah,
Okay.
I thought it was a great movie. Definitely watch it.
Cool.
Let me know what you think.
All right. I will do that. All right. That's the Beetlejuice is coming out. I'm excited about Beetlejuice.
I don't know if I'm on the fence. I was really
Are you?
excited, and as
Yeah.
we get closer, I'm like, I'm sure it'll be fun, and
Yeah.
I will try to go see it in the theaters.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to change my life or anything like that. I
Probably
feel
not.
like it's
No.
going to be like older, pudgier Beetlejuice that maybe doesn't
Right.
have as much sting to it, but I don't know. Who knows? I could be pleasantly surprised. So
All right.
I will look forward to that.
All right. Let's talk music and then we can
Yes,
wrap this up.
please. Yes.
I'll turn it over to you. You're the music guy. What do you got?
So I
I
got
know
a
you want to
couple
talk music.
things that I do
Yeah.
want to talk about. And we'll start with the most shameful part of this whole soliloquy, which is I had to yeah, fuck you. I had to I didn't have to, but my wife Lauren, she turned 40 on August 25th, a couple weeks ago. And that night just happened to be a concert at our favorite concert venue, which I affectionately call Deer Creek and will always call Deer Creek. And we went to go see the New Kids on the Block, which was, is far from a show that I would want to add to my concert spreadsheet of all the bands that I've ever seen. But, she thought it would be fun. And it was New Kids on the Block. It was Paula Abdul and it was DJ Jazzy Jeff, sans the Fresh Prince. So I was like, wow, this is going to be interesting. But also, if you just sort of have fun with it, it could be like a really great time. So we rented a party bus and we took 15 of our closest friends to this concert and we had an absolute blast. We got really hammered and it was a Sunday night and we went to the show and it was really fun, but it was also one of the worst fucking shows I've ever seen in my life. I can confidently say. I don't remember a lot about DJ Jazzy Jeff. Paula Abdul was terrible. She was talking most of the show. It was almost like a Vegas show that didn't really translate really well to an outdoor amphitheater in the middle of a cornfield. But it wasn't a good show. And then the New Kids came out and they sang about 20 songs, which I didn't know they had, and some of them weren't
Wow.
theirs. But like I don't remember most of it. And at one point in the show, about three-quarters of the way through the New Kid show, I had to walk one of my friends out to the party bus because she was not uh, ready to be conscious for the rest of the show. So,
Not
like
well. Yeah.
there was some of the in imbibing and all of that stuff. But it was a really fun evening, but probably one of the worst concerts I've been to. One of my least favorite.
Did
shows ever.
the only thing that matters, did Lauren have a good time?
She had a great time,
Good.
and it that's all I cared about, right?
Good.
Because that was
Good.
that was the whole purpose of it. We had a really great weekend. Her birthday weekend was really fun, but that was the culmination of it was a New Kids on the Block show in 2024. So don't go see them. Don't, whatever you do, take my recommendation. Don't get trapped into that show because I think you will be sorely disappointed unless you are a Gen X female who grew up listening to them with posters on your wall and all that stuff. Then it may have some genuine nostalgia, but I just don't think they can pull it off. I don't
Okay.
think it was worth
Well, I dodged that bullet. They were here. That show was here, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks before it was in Indianapolis. And Amanda had no desire to go to it. And I had even less desire to go to it. So we didn't go to it. So I didn't
lucky
have to.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't.
that's good.
Now the show that I'm guessing you want to talk about next is that I could have gone to and I didn't because I came home that day. I didn't have tickets. I'm talking about Sammy Hagar. I was gonna go. In fact, I think I called you that night, and I came home. I didn't have tickets, and it was raining, and I just really didn't feel well, so I didn't go. But I know you did, and I know that you and I and Jeff Tyler were sharing some text as you were there that night, and I
Well, I
could not
was
be I
drunkenly, I
could not
was
be happier. That text thread that might made me so happy. Uh,
really, I
yeah, it
felt
did. It,
really
it did.
bad because I was
No, it did.
clearly a little bit buzzed up, and I
It
I
made me happy.
felt
It made me happy because you were clearly having such an amazing time at that show, and I was living vicariously through you, and I thought that was awesome.
the only thing that would have made me happier and no bullshit is if you were there or if Jeff was there or somebody
Yeah,
who, I mean, I was there with a good buddy of mine and he had a good time and he really appreciated it. But like, I felt very passionately that I needed to be there with somebody who could just lose themselves in that show the same way that I did
yeah,
because it was fantastic. And this was less than a week after the New Kid show. So it was a very good palate cleanser.
yes,
So, I mean, this tour was he dubbed it the best of all worlds tour. So he came out
okay,
when he announced he was going to do this tour. He said very specifically, I'm going to lean heavy on Van Halen songs, which,
yep,
it's not like he's never done that before. And certainly David Lee Roth has leaned almost exclusively off of Van Halen songs, but Sammy, unlike Dave, has a very extensive solo catalog, not to mention songs with Chickenfoot, songs with The Circle, and some other bands that he's been in, songs with Montrose, which is the best band he's been in outside of Van Halen, in my opinion. And so he's got a lot of material to pull from, but he's like, you know what? Nobody's ever going to do this again. I think he got kind of frustrated that like Alex Van Halen sort of famously sold all his shit. Like he got rid of all his drums. He's done all this stuff. He's like basically checking out. He's retiring. He's not probably not ever going to be seen on stage again.
not playing music.
No,
Wow.
I don't think you will ever see or hear Alex Van Halen in music again, and that's most likely because of his brother passing away and just his inability to move on past that. And I respect that, but it's also it's a huge bummer for all of us fans of rock and roll. So Sammy, for whatever reason, chose this year to do this tour, and he's like, I don't think anybody else is going to sing these songs. I don't think anybody else is going to do this music. So I'm going to go out on tour and I'm going to do it. And, it's certainly not a bad publicity thing, right? You're going to go on tour and sing a bunch of Van Halen songs. But what I will say is the greatest thing about this is that he comes out and he doesn't sing all the greatest hits. I mean, he does sing a couple of them, You're going to hear Right Now, you're going to hear Why Can't This Be Love, but you're also going to hear he opened the fucking show with Good Enough, which is the one of the greatest
Wow.
opening songs ever, right? Hello,
Yeah.
baby. And, we talked about that with Jeff Tyler, like how great of a song that was. And he also played Runaround. He played Judgment Day. He played 5150. They played Summer Nights. I was crawling out of my skin being at a Sammy concert, listening to Summer Nights without you there. It was breaking my
Yeah,
fucking heart into pieces, which is what I knew he was going to play it too. I haven't been cheating on the set list, but I knew enough to know that he was going to play that, and that's why I was trying to talk you into coming. I'm like, dude, the last time he plays
I know.
Summer Nights
Yeah,
in Indiana, we gotta be there. But
yeah.
he played so many great songs. He played Eagles Fly. He even played a handful of David Lee Roth songs. They played Panama. They played Ain't Talking About Love. They had a couple other songs on the set list that unfortunately I was cheated out of because they actually shut the show down early in Indianapolis because we had inclement weather, we had thunderstorms, there was really bad lightning out in the distance that could be seen. They tried to shut it down, and he's like, "No, I'm not getting off the stage," and kept playing. And at one point they stopped the show, delayed it about 45 minutes, and then he came back on stage, played another hour and a half, and then basically said, "I'm sorry, they're making me get off. I can't play anymore. I gotta go." So I lost out on seeing songs like Mas Tequila, Heavy Metal. I can't. Well, no, he played "I Can't Drive 55." Uh, Space Station Number Five, which is an old Montrose song. Jump. He was gonna play Jump, or like Michael Anthony was gonna sing on that, and then he was gonna end the set with When It's Love, and I missed it. I
Oh
missed it
wow.
because of the weather.
Yeah,
But regardless of the songs that I missed, and regardless of the fact that, Sammy Hagar is 76 years old, he's clearly not trying.
yeah.
He's not even trying to hit the notes that he did, but he's still pulling it off really well. And he's still got the screams. He can still do the "Hello, Baby," and he can still do all that. Oh, Seventh Seal, by the way, made it into the set list, which is the
Wow.
song that we debated heavily on our Balance podcast
Yeah,
about not being a great song live. But holy shit, he fucking pulled it off, and he did a really good job of it. But it was one of the best Sammy sets that I ever saw. And it was fantastic, and it was very rejuvenating after that New Kids set list. And that was the second to last show of the tour. And then he finished it off in St. Louis the night later. And that's it. And I'm reasonably sure that's the last time he'll be in Indianapolis. And 76 years old, man. Like, what more can we ask for from that
yeah,
guy? Um, and it was a very, very important and very profound experience for me. And it breaks my heart that I couldn't have that with you or Jeff or anybody else who's just like a diehard Van
yeah.
Halen fan like us. But man, it was a great, great show.
Well, I'm genuinely really happy for you that you got to experience that. Like I said, I was just like as I was watching those. I can't remember where I was. Was that a Tuesday night? Do you remember? I
It
don't
was
remember. I
a
was
Friday night, actually. It was
Was
last
it
Friday
okay?
night.
I was doing. I don't know. I can't remember what I was doing something, and I couldn't like engage in that text thread. But I was watching you and Jeff chat, and it just made me so happy because I know what Van Halen and more specifically Sammy means to you. And I was just really happy that you got to see that. I'm bummed that I couldn't be there with you, but it makes me again, it makes me happy that I could live vicariously through you to see that show. That's awesome. I'm glad you got to see it.
Yeah, and I felt bad that I was drug texting everybody all this stuff, but
No,
like
no, no.
you guys are the only ones I would do that to, because you especially, like, you started this Van Halen thing
Right,
for me. Like, you are the kindling
right.
for that fire. And so, like, I will never ever be excited or passionate about something Van Halen related without sharing it with you,
Yeah,
because you are the reason that I have become that. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so thankful that's something that I have grabbed onto that I will never ever let go of. So, not to
that's
make you
awesome.
feel bad for not being there,
No,
obviously.
no, no, no.
That would
Yeah,
not have been convenient in any way. But it was just great. Like, I felt top of the world, no pun intended.
yeah.
It was great.
So two quick thing. Well, first of all, do you have are there other music things that you want to talk about before we wrap up? I got two quick Van Halen things to touch.
Yes, I will mention one other thing, and I'll make it very
Okay,
quick.
okay.
The Oasis reunion, which is circling the globe right now, is
Oh,
very exciting for me. If by chance it ever makes its way to the United States, I'm happy that those guys have finally buried the hatchet, if not for anything other than a gigantic fucking
the
paycheck.
check. Yeah,
I don't care. I loved Oasis. I am an unapologetic fan of that band because I think they put out great music, and they were a huge part of my musical influences of the mid 90s. And I really sincerely hope I get one more chance to see them live. That's all I need, just one more. I've seen them twice, and they were both good shows. They're great shows, but I want one more chance to see them live, and I'm hopeful that I get that opportunity. But they'll have to
Cool.
come back to the States for that.
Cool. I hope you do. I hope you do. Okay, I got two quick Van Halen things
Yes.
to leave you with. One is, so you mentioned Alex, right? You mentioned Alex that has effectively kind of, sold his drums and hung up. So let me ask you this. So Eddie's been gone for what, 4 years now? 3 years, 4 years, something like that, right?
Four. Yeah.
Um, outside of putting together Van Halen with presumably Wolfie and whoever else, like what else is there for Alex to do? I guess my question is Alex a good enough drummer that he could that he can be in a band that is not Van Halen
Oh,
in your opinion?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's a fantastic drummer. His pedigree alone would serve any band, I think. Now, granted, Alex is older than Eddie. Eddie was 65, I think, when he died, and that was 4 years ago. So I'm not very good with math, but Alex is in his 70s. So as a
Okay.
drummer in your 70s, I don't know,
Okay. All
how
right. Yeah.
proficient you can be. Is he good enough? Yes. Will he ever do it? Absolutely not. There's not a chance we will ever
Okay.
see Alex anywhere else in a band. I mean, if anything, maybe he joins somebody on stage for something, but I can't even think of who could drag him out. I cannot think of it because nobody can even really get in touch with him. I mean, Wolfgang apparently does talk, so maybe that's it. Maybe he would get on stage with Wolfgang if Wolfgang asked him. Wolfgang would never in a million years ask his uncle to come up on stage with him. He
Oh
wouldn't do
no.
it. No, not because they don't have a good relationship,
I was
but
gonna say, do they
because
not?
no, they have a great relationship. He says they talk all the time. I mean, if you're to believe what he says,
Yeah.
I think it's more of a Wolfgang doesn't have
Respect.
the reverence to Van Halen that
Okay.
all the fans do. So, like, he knows that if Alex comes on stage with him, it's going to be a big Van Halen puff piece kind of thing. And he's just like,
Yeah.
I don't want to incite any rumors of there being a reunion or
Okay.
anything like that happening. And I don't want to put my uncle out there on stage to do all that. But I think if there was ever a situation where Alex would drum again, it would be with
With
Wolfgang
Wolfie.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
But I think Wolfie has too much respect for that whole thing to be like, no, man, I don't want to make you do that because I know the whole reason you don't do it is because you lost your brother. And
I gotcha.
that's too fucking hard.
And that's fair. And that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my final Van Halen thing. So and I didn't touch on it. I saw Twisters.
Oh, really?
In the yeah, I did. I saw Twisters in the theater. I loved it, and I'll leave it at that. We don't have to. We've gone
Nice.
almost 2 hours, so yeah, I thought it was great. But after watching Twisters, I went back and I watched Twister, and that brought me back to Humans Being.
Oh,
Humans Being quote unquote deserves to be on the Balance album. That song is amazing. I
yes.
lo- I lo- I like that song more now than I did then,
Yeah.
and I just in fact I took a screenshot of it in my car and I was going to send it to you and Jeff, and I'm just like, because we had talked about the Balance album, but that and again I understand that movie came out after Balance and whatever, but like it fits very well with that album, and it should have been, like, in a perfect world in my mind it should have been on that album.
Yeah, I agree. Thematically, it feels like it's a heavy song. It's kind of
Yeah.
dark. It has a very bright and poppy chorus, but everything
Yeah.
else is just it's very chuggy and it's very minor key-ish and all that stuff. And I think that you're right. It would have I could have well, that'd be a good topic. Like what would you take off of Balance to put that on, or would you just add it? I would just add it, but like if you had to take a song off of
Well,
Balance
you
for
take
that.
the instrumentals out, both of
Okay,
them.
that's
Yeah.
okay. That was stupid then.
Right.
Yeah, that you
Yeah.
take Strung Out off and
Yeah.
you'd put that on there, or you'd take
Yeah.
Doing Time or something like that. But yeah, I agree. I think that was and that, when I heard Humans Being before understanding that the band was in turmoil, I was very excited. I'm like,
Oh
this
yeah.
direction is really great for
Yeah.
Van Halen. Like they need to put away the party sex stuff and try to write serious music. because I think they have it in them. I think the Balance album was good in that respect and could have been even better. That was the first album they ever really tried to write with any kind of serious content in it.
Yeah.
And like give them one album and then the next one will be even better. And then it just all fell to shit after
I
that.
remember very vividly, and I can't tell you like when I heard that song. And I know it actually wasn't in the theater for Twister. So they must have released it beforehand. But I remember very vividly having thoughts when I heard that song of Van Halen is back. Like when I
Oh,
heard that
yeah.
song, you know what I mean?
Or they're
And
just
again,
they're chugging it like they're not dying.
right.
Like they are
Yeah,
fighting
right.
the
Yeah,
good
yeah,
fight
yeah,
of all
yeah,
those bands that were super popular back in
yeah.
those days. And it's not a good time to be one of those bands because
Right.
all the alternative and grunge bands were taking over everything. But man, they were still doing good work. I
Yeah.
thought they were. I know Balance wasn't well received from a lot of people, but I thought they had enough to keep them carrying through. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it never ended up that way.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you want to hear me and Pip and Jeff Tyler talk about the Balance album, go back to episode 89 in the archives. We chatted for almost 2 hours
Yes.
about the Balance album. So
Probably the best Van Halen flavored podcast that we ever did. I'd
for
have to
sure.
say.
For sure. Well, hey, we're coming into spooky season. It's September.
Yes,
So
let's get some
what
horror movies back on
I
this
was gonna I
agenda.
was gonna say what's next on the podcast? You got any thoughts?
I don't know, man. I
And
mean,
it can't be 3 months from now. It can't be.
it won't be. It definitely
Yeah.
won't be. If we can do a couple weeks, that would be great. But I will say that I'm looking forward to October because that's when I start watching a goddamn horror movie every night that I can. I really want to watch Don't Breathe because I'm inspired by Fede Alvarez and
Yep.
Alien Romulus. And I don't know any of his other work really, so I want to go back and
Did you
try
ever
to revisit some of that.
did you watch Evil Dead?
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I did watch that one, and it
Okay.
was good. I'm not a big
Yeah.
fan of that franchise. Like it's fine, it's
Neither
okay. But I
neither
will
am
say
I.
that I liked a lot of what he did in
Yeah,
that movie. So I've heard Don't Breathe is really good. I think there's a sequel. I'm not sure, but I
there
want to
is.
go back and
Yeah.
see that. Yeah, for sure.
I'm not a fan of the Evil Dead series either, with the exception of that movie. That movie is phenomenal. I
Okay.
love that movie. Yes, there is a Don't Breathe 2. I'm hearing a lot of really good things recently about Abigail. Have you seen Abigail?
I haven't. No, I don't know anything
It
about it.
is it is by the same guys that did the latest Scream series.
Oh,
It's a vampire movie, and it sounds great. So if you're looking for something to watch, sounds very good.
nice.
Just came out. 2024 was released. So
Very cool.
um all right. Well, hey, it's we're at September 5th now. This is going to be episode what? This is going to be God, we got to kick it into gear because
We do if we're going to finish this year with 100.
this is 93. So we got 7 more. 6
All right.
more.
That's gonna be a lot, but we can do it. I know we can do it. We got to be disciplined and slightly buzzed, but we can do it.
We can do it. All right. Let's figure that shit out. That being said, that's Pip. I'm Chewie. This is the 411 from 406. We'll talk to you soon. Aloha.
It's good to be back. Adios.